Welcome back to Global Realist University. We now begin the second module that focuses on comparing existential imperative realism, or EIR, to rival theoretical frameworks. Let's start with classical realism, especially from the Hans Morgenthau perspective. He gives us a disciplined way to see international politics without illusions. States seek power, leaders balance interests, and moral crusades often mask advantage. That clarity is useful. The problem is explanatory depth. Classical realism describes the struggle for power, but does not finally ground why the struggle must recur. It treats will to power as a feature of human nature and the national interest as a prudential compass, yet it leaves the engine of recurrence underexplained. Existential imperative realism fills that gap. Start with Morgenthau's anchor points. He assumes a permanent human nature prone to the pursuit of power, a political world defined by interests, and a prudential ethic that restrains moralism. From this view, order is built by balancing power and tempering ambition. The theory works well as a guide for statesmen because it warns against utopian projects and explains why prudence beats zeal. What it does not do is supply a deeper account of the pressures that make even prudent orders provisional. Why do the same dynamics reappear after momentary settlements? Why do temporary balances unravel even when leaders are cautious? Existential imperative realism begins beneath policy and psychology. It proposes that the root condition in politics is the existential imperative, borrowed from Spinoza's conatus. Every actor strives to persist as itself. This is not a preference. It is the defining condition of being an actor at all. From that base, Nietzsche's will to power becomes intelligible as the natural overflow of successful persistence. Once a system stabilizes its core, surplus capacity seeks expression, extension, and shaping of the environment. Morgenthau observes a will to power. EIR explains its source and timing. EIR then specifies the constraints that make the struggle recurring rather than episodic. Separation means distinct memories, identities, and threat perceptions that never fully converge, which guarantees misrecognition even in calm periods. Scarcity means finite material and symbolic goods, from energy and territory to prestige and legitimacy, which pushes actors toward preemption and hedging. Vulnerability means exposure to shocks that cannot be abolished, which drives redundancy and, at times, forward defense. Temporality and entropy mean decay over time, which injects urgency, closing windows, and opportunism into decision-making. These are not temporary variables. They are the permanent environment within which any balance of power must operate. Seen from that foundation, power-seeking is not merely a habit of human nature. It is an adaptive response to an unforgiving field. The balance of power is not a moral achievement. It is a provisional configuration that holds only while the field's pressures are temporarily offset. Morgenthau could tell you to be prudent within a balance. EIR tells you why the balance will strain even if all players try to be prudent. Scarcity tightens, perceptions diverge, vulnerabilities get rediscovered, and time erodes capacity. The structure pushes actors back into competition regardless of temperament. EIR also sharpens a blind spot in classical realism, the internal source of external behavior. Morgenthau rarely theorizes how a society's internal coherence, mythos, and industrial base condition its conduct abroad. EIR treats habitus as a strategic substrate. Historical trauma or success encodes preconscious dispositions. Those dispositions become operating rules under stress. A state with an insecurity habitus will privilege control and preemption. A state with a surplus habitus will broadcast norms, open trade corridors, and try to set standards. Neither posture is accidental. Both are expressions of a system trying to preserve itself under the four constraints. This deeper structure clarifies policy puzzles that classical realism often leaves at the level of prudence. Why does a secure power expand its commitments after a consolidation at home? Existential overflow. Why do bargains collapse even when framed as mutual interest? Divergent habitus and the return of separation under stress. Why do sanctions, alliances, or arms races sometimes succeed and sometimes fail? Their outcomes track the underlying capacities and the tightness of the constraints, not the elegance of the diplomatic design. What follows for analysis and practice? First, diagnose the field before judging the statesman. Map the actor's conatus. What must be preserved to remain itself? Map surplus, where expression will go once the core stabilizes. Then score the constraints in the current scene. How tight is scarcity? How acute is vulnerability? How wide is perceptual separation? And how fast is time closing the window? This tells you whether a settlement is an interlude or a hinge, and whether a new assertion is likely or merely rhetorical. Second, reframe prudence. In classical realism, prudence is a virtue. In ER, prudence becomes a calibration problem under pressure. The same leader may look prudent or reckless depending on field conditions. You evaluate not by stated restraint, but by fit with constraints. A seemingly modest policy that leaves a vital vulnerability exposed is imprudent in EIR terms. A seemingly aggressive forward posture that removes an existential bottleneck can be prudent if it reduces exposure over time. Third, anticipate rhythm. Classical realism warns against crusades and hubris. EIR adds a clock. Survival first creates the capacity to expand. Expansion triggers counterbalancing by others. That counterbalancing redistributes resources and risk, and the system settles into a temporary low-stress equilibrium. Peace is an interlude rather than an endpoint. Absent a substantive upgrade in capabilities that relaxes those constraints, the cycle recurs. Consider nuclear weapons after 1945. For centuries, great powers cycled through buildup, war, and uneasy peace. The advent of deliverable thermonuclear arsenals changed a core constraint. The cost of direct great power war became civilization ending. That capability upgrade relaxed the vulnerability constraint at the level of regime survival via deterrence and redirected competition into proxies, technology races, and economic pressure. The conflict rhythm didn't vanish, but the specific cycle of frequent great power shooting wars largely broke because the underlying constraint shifted. Classical realism describes the struggle for power and instructs decision makers to pursue interest with restraint. EIR locates the struggle in a necessary structure and derives interest from the survival needs of concrete systems under unchanging constraints. Use classical realism to avoid moral theater. Use EIR to understand why the theater never closes. In the next module, we will extend this comparison to structural realism and show where system-level explanations help and where they need the existential core that EIR provides.